Hello, everybody, and welcome to an INCROWD815 podcast special, the hot Rockford housing market, as I bring a bunch of our guests onto the screen and fill everybody in on what in the world is going on today. Let's see if this will work right there. Thank you very much. There we go. There we go. The Wall Street Journal published an article on April 25th, 2024, and they ranked the top real estate markets in the United States according to them and Realtor.com. And they placed Rockford at number one, top of the list. And this ranking, they said, evaluated the real estate market and economic health of the 200 most populous metro areas in the country. The Rockford metro area was the only one in Illinois to crack the top 50. Peoria landed at number 59. So word is definitely out now. Rockford is an extremely affordable place to live. If you've ever checked the cost of living pretty much anywhere else in the country or lived anywhere else for that matter, you know this to be true. You already knew this. The big challenge now, of course, like the rest of the country, is that we need more inventory. The current supply of available homes for sale does not meet the current buyer demand. And to talk about that topic today, I'm honored to be joined by a roundtable of exceptional local leaders. Tony Vanderhayden first became a realtor in 2004. She founded the first Keller Williams Realty franchise in Rockford in 2008. She remains the operating principal, as well as continuing to be an active realtor herself, leading arguably the most successful real estate team in the area, in the 0.5% top of all agents in the nation. Team sold on Tony, and of which I've been a buyer specialist on her team since 2013. Tom McNamara has served the city of Rockford for 11 years now, last 7 as mayor. Before that, served 4 years as one of our aldermen. Ron Kluwer has been the Illinois market president at Gorman & Company the past 5 years, previously CEO of the Rockford Housing Authority. And he writes a Substack very extensively on housing concerns all across the country. Connor Brown has been serving now 5 years as the CEO of the Northwest Illinois Alliance of Realtors, and he's got over 20 years of experience in government affairs and real estate related advocacy. And then John Groh, the president and CEO of Rockford Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, the RACVB, and GoRockford.com. Except for a 2-year stint with the Chamber of Commerce here in Rockford, he's been with the RACVB since 1999. And I think we can all say we all care deeply about our Rockford area community. We've agreed to be here today to talk about the specific topic of Rockford housing. And just to clarify, we're not here to debate anything. This is more of a brainstorming session to help find solutions to the challenges that we currently face when it comes to our current lack of housing inventory. And by way of a personal introduction and icebreaker, if you will, I've asked these wonderful people to share a little something about Rockford that they love that might not show up in a tourist brochure. So, Tony, if I can get you to go first, what do you love about Rockford that maybe isn't in one of John Groh's Convention and Visitor Bureau's brochures?
You know, my family, Greg, good question, loves being outdoors. And so I think probably our favorite thing about the Rockford area happens to be just the amount of parks available to you and the variety of things that you can do in them, from Rock Hut State Park, paddleboarding on the lake, to Atwood Park, mountain biking. And my kids, my grandbabies, and all of our dogs do runs, along the Kishwaukee. So I would say the Park District and the Forest Preserve areas.
Mayor McNamara, you got something you can share that you love about Rockford that's not in the brochures?
Okay, so appreciate the opportunity to be on with you and everyone else this morning. I would say the one thing that I really love that does not show up in brochures is the ability and the ease that there is to really get involved in Rockford and make an impact. I think if you're a younger person moving to our area, you really have the pick of the litter of saying, this organization or this issue is important to me, and you can get involved and you can do it in a meaningful way. And I shouldn't just say young person, if you're anyone, you can get engaged and get involved very quickly, but you can also do it in an incredibly meaningful way, and you can see the impact of your work immediately.
All right, Ron?
Sure. So thank you, Greg, for hosting today. Happy to be on. I've lived in Chicago, and I've lived in a small town in central Wisconsin, 336 people compared to millions. And what I think is most attractive to me in Rockford hints on what the mayor was saying. It is a very, it's considered a large city. However, it's very intimate. So the ability to engage and interact across the city and know people, on any side of town, be engaged with people. I think any city is really driven by the quality of the people who live there. And we have some really wonderful residents. And so it's great to use all the assets we have, but I think the biggest is the people that we're able to live next to and work next to.
Absolutely. All right, Connor Brown, how about you? What would you like to share about Rockford that you love?
Besides the amazing pizza, I would say the mobility. I mean, I think that doesn't show up on brochures, but the fact that you could get to your kid's soccer game in 15 minutes after work, you're never late. I can't count the number of times like, oh shoot, I have a meeting downtown and I gotta race, across town, but it's only 20 minutes. You can be anywhere. And so I think with so many people having demanding careers, or just even on the weekend, I mean, like Ron, I've lived elsewhere and I've lived in the DC metro area. I mean, going to Home Depot was a half a day experience, like you actually had to find parking to go to Home Depot. And so, just to take that for granted, is really something, I think a lot of people here in the Rockford region don't realize, but a lot of people coming into the Rockford region really find incredibly special.
Absolutely. That's my answer too. Now for the tough one, John, the one that makes all these brochures and stuff. You might have a tougher one there. What do you got for us?
Well, I think these are all good suggestions that we can add to our brochures, but I was going along the food line like Connor. We do have great pizza, but I was thinking more of a place that it probably is in a brochure. I know it is, but maybe under-known by many, and that is a little restaurant on Seminary Street on the Bear Meadows campus, the Bear Den. Great place for breakfast or for lunch. Really unique, shows you the flavor of an industrial, hardworking community. You'll sit next to guys who are out in the scrap yards, and you'll get a great burger or egg sandwich, and everything in the restaurant's made or came from, was sourced from the scrap yard, and is a pretty amazing place. So Bear Den, and that's Bear with an H, and I would encourage folks to check it out.
And I've driven by that place numerous times. I've never been inside.
Well, Greg, let's go for lunch.
Check it out. Awesome. Well, to start things out for us today, I mean, the top question that we have here to start things off, this Wall Street Journal article comes out. Them and Realtor.com say that Rockford is the #1 hottest market in the country. And my question to you guys is, and I'll ask you to raise a hand, let me know who wants to go first on this. Why do you think they said that? What do you think it was that caused them to? Obviously, they're doing stats, they're checking things across the country all the time, and they're seeing numbers. Was this just a numbers game that they said, oh, based on increase in home values, that's the hottest market in the country? What do you think caused them to even write this article in the first place and put the spotlight on Rockford? Anyone got a comment to start? Ron, go ahead.
I mean, it is in part numbers. I mean, it's always about numbers and demographics, but this wasn't just the increase in housing prices, but the stability and the affordability, and built on the fact that we're a great region, right? There's a great deal to offer, and so quality of life was one of those scoreable factors. So it put all those pieces together, and said this is a great place to live.
Hey, Greg. In my opinion, after selling real estate in this area for 25 years, when that came out on the Wall Street Journal, I was like, no kidding. This is our same community. You finally are realizing, and I think it's really a source of data. The data just finally put us on the map because we have our foot in aerospace. We have many, many opportunities in this area. We're still equidistant from Madison, Milwaukee, Chicago. We've got a beautiful river running through our city. I mean, we've not changed. The data fact of our affordability with the current work that we've all been doing in this city finally hit the papers, right? It's just the data.
And I often tell people when I talk to people from out of town, back in 2004, ironically enough, 20 years ago, just about this month, I went through a big change in my life, and I had to decide if I was staying in Rockford or not. And my wife and I kind of did a deep dive into communities across the country. It's like we can go anywhere. My wife's a teacher; her job's in demand, and I was in radio broadcasting at the time, and the opportunities that came my way, the two biggest ones were in San Luis Obispo, California, and in near Lynchburg, Virginia. So both coasts were kind of looking at us in the face. And guess what I found when I started looking at cost of living in both of those places?
Yeah.
I have to easily be making 2 to 3 times as much money in my vocation to even live, the life similar to what we're living here in Rockford. So our decision to stay in Rockford, besides loving our family so much and all the family that we have here in the Midwest, also boiled down to cost of living. And that really hasn't changed over the last 20 years. Cost of living here has just been exceptional.
Greg, I would add, I think Ron and Tony hit on a lot of it, but I mean, it's certainly affordability. It's certainly the location. I won't dive into all of the Wall Street Journal's data points, but I would say it's also, we have tremendous amount of momentum right now. You look at the amount of economic development that is taking place. I mean, I can't recall the last time in our area that we have, 4 or 5 more than $300 million development projects taking place. And I think it's also what I said at the beginning of great thing I love about Rockford that's not on the brochure is people can make an impact. I would also add to that Rockford is unique that we never shy away from challenges, and we usually go towards them, but we go towards them together. So you look at like educational attainment. Well, now if you own a home in Rockford, your kids get to go to college for free. You look at internet access that is troubling all over the country. We're now putting fiber optic cable in front of every single home, business, and organization. We see a challenge and we try to meet that need. And when we do it at our best, we're doing it together.
Right.
Well said.
Greg, you mentioned, why they wrote the article, and I love the fact that they referenced their previous article from 2014, where we were dead last in the country. We were the underwater mortgage capital of America, and I remember when that story came out, and we're kind of scrambling locally on how do we respond, and there were programs for people to right size their mortgages, and we're really trying to get the word out locally, and it was kind of a punch in the gut, and but to have the national recognition, I think locally there's still some people in disbelief that we're not a great market to be in, that we're not a great place to live in, and I think having the numbers to kind of back it up to say, listen, we've experienced enormous growth in value of our homes here, and there are a lot of people moving from California, Chicago, East Coast into our community because of yes, there's the affordability factor, but there's also the value factor. We can compare numbers, but look at what you can get from a price per square foot, how big the backyard is, all of those things that people just can't get over. Like, really, I can get all of this and still be at work in 10 minutes. I mean, it's mind blowing to them.
And Greg, one thing that I keep seeing people say, at least in Rockford, is this all happened so suddenly. And I actually would push back against that. I think that's happened due to a lot of hard work over more than a decade. I mean, one thing that I know Connor's been very much involved, and last night I had the opportunity to go to our school board meeting, and I believe it was 2012, 2013, we had a 15.8% property tax rate, and our property values were dropping year after year. Taxes going up and values going down every single year. Well, we made a concerted effort. The school district led the charge and said they're not going to increase property taxes. And then the city followed, and we have not increased property taxes in more than a decade. And I don't know of a city and a school district that combined have said, we're just not going to increase property taxes and both drop property taxes in that time period. I can't think of another one in Illinois or in the Midwest. And today, we're not where we want to be, but we're that 15.8 just got in the mail. It's now 10.3. My value has almost doubled in my home. It's not by coincidence. It didn't just happen. It's through so much hard work. And I'm only mentioning one piece. Everyone on this has done a lot of hard work in so many areas.
True. So we know we've got a hot market for houses, and we know we have people moving to our area. They're doing the kind of the reverse of what I did 20 years ago. They're looking at some of them. I think are choosing maybe not to move here because of salary. They look at the salary first, and then don't get into the cost of living part of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, hey, if you look at both sides of that coin, you're going to realize you can make a little bit less money in Rockford. Not that you will, but you might. And you can still get by just fine because the cost of living here is so much better than pretty much anywhere else in the country. I don't know how many people do that. I don't know how many people you guys interview as far as potential jobs coming into Rockford that people are saying stuff like that. Are you hearing anything like that from potential job candidates?
As far as affordability, Greg?
Yeah, if they're just looking at the bottom line of their salary and not really looking at the cost of living on it.
Oh, I see. I think in our world, we get the surprised folks that say, I can get what kind of house for what kind of money?
Right.
Yeah. And so people coming in from California, especially people moving here from Chicago. We just recently had a professional move in from Chicago who was working with one of our buyer's agents. And she was like, I cannot believe how little this house costs. And the buyer agent said, don't worry, I think we can get it for an even better price. I'm going to watch your back. We'll negotiate it for you.
To that point about cost of living comparisons, on madeforrockford.com, which is a talent, attraction website that we have that helps explain all the benefits of living in Rockford. There's a great cost of living calculator that whatever metro market you're in the country, you can enter and then enter our DMA to see, as it relates to housing, as it relates to groceries, as it relates to medical and other core categories that we all spend our money on, how much further your money will go here than in other markets. And if it won't go as far here as it does in the market you're currently living in, it'll tell you that too. So it kind of contextualizes category by category. And we have heard from major employers that are using that with potential recruits that it's a great tool for folks looking to understand how much further their dollar goes here than in other communities.
Trying to look up the website real quick, madeforrockford.com?
Madeforrockford.com, yep.
Okay, for some reason I'm not getting that to come up for me, but to see if I can correct the address on that one. So we got great resources here in Rockford. We have awesome resources all over our area. So the top challenges now that we have that we're facing to meet current home buyer demand. Our current home buyer demand, we all know, is definitely above this current supply. And I remind people that it's going to be that way for a very long time because building houses, it's not like building cars. We can't just fire up the car building plant and kick out a bunch of houses. It just doesn't quite work that way. So are you seeing any solutions that are worth brainstorming about here today that we can kind of knock around as far as ideas go?
I want to give a shout out to the city for the work they're doing to really look at how do they change the environment to spur housing development in the city. I think often we see communities look at how do we invest in business growth and focus a bunch of money there. But I think we've realized that we also need to focus on housing growth. And so, I'll admit I'm pretty hard on the city sometimes on land use regulations.
I'm recording all of this right now.
That's okay. You can replay it. I'll admit it anytime. I'm hard on you guys because it requires that we look at internally what we're doing for land use and all kinds of other permitting requirements. And the city is diving deep into that. The 3-year tax abatement for new construction is an example. The consideration of rescinding some of the 2008 land use regulation changes to spur additional development. These are things that are important. But I think, we often look to our city leaders to suggest that they have to, create solutions. But I think as citizens, we also have to think about our own role. There's a strong need for more than just single family housing in the market. There's a need for multifamily. And, unfortunately, the one thing that I think I'm going to press our community to be better at is to get rid of the not my backyard mentality and think about the need for duplexes, 4 families, 3 families. I live in Edgewater, and I was surrounded by single family homes mixed with duplexes and fourplexes. And that neighborhood's a solid neighborhood. We didn't fall apart because multifamily was mixed into a single family neighborhood. We need to get back to that. And the city can give us all the tools, but if the neighbors come out and rise up, like I see they're doing around the apartment property near Lino's, the proposed apartment property, we've got to think about the fact that we need additional housing inventory at all price points, rental and for sale, and that multifamily is an option.
Mm-hmm.
Ron's right. I'll say one of the challenges we have, and I think maybe other cities have it, we're just, if I'm being honest, we're understaffed. And so I think we kind of move from one fire to the next fire. And I think we do benefit from, we joke about Ron being tough on the city. I don't know necessarily if he's tough on the city. I think he's doing what he should be doing. He is pushing us to do better and better and to think of things that realtors do the same thing. I don't take it as like, oh my gosh, they're beating down on us. I take it as give me more and more ideas. So Ron touched on the property tax rebate. It's one idea, and we've worked with realtors and many others to get that done. So you build a new residential unit, single or multifamily, you get 3 years of your property tax rebated. You get waived of all of your permit fees, all your water connection fees. So you build in a $200,000 property, that's about a $26,000 savings to you. And oh, by the way, you'll have fiber optic cable. Oh, by the way, we'll pay for your kids to go to college. Oh, by the way, we're going to have a metro line from Rockford to Chicago. And so we're trying to layer these incentives on, but we have to have more. One of the biggest things we struggle with, and probably people on this can better articulate it than I can, our property values, we keep saying, are going up, which is fantastic, but they're not going up enough. Our assessed value to construction cost is still out of whack. And so why we're providing that incentive package is we're just trying to bring it back a little bit. And we're not there yet. Someone like Tony or Ron or any of you could say this better than me, but I would say in my head, we're still $25,000 to $50,000 gap that we got to close. And I think some of that is value increase. I think some of that is some risk and some investment that needs to take place on the private market. But it all has to come back in. And that's just a big challenge that we're still seeing.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge in that our pricing is edging towards that amount where it makes it worth to build a property. Yet the biggest challenges are, number one, we're working with businesses that expect to make a profit, right? Builders that expect to make a profit. The other side of that is the building constraints now with, I factor it's probably $25,000 to $35,000 additional overlay to meet code, right? And so all of that is chinking away at that opportunity of why would I consider Rockford, even though my kids can have higher education for free, fiber optic, right? We need to close that gap. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. I think it's something that can be met. And the fact that our average sales price, Connor, I believe we're at about, as a board, like 186 right now.
We're higher. Like April numbers haven't been published yet. I mean, they've been published internally, but not pushed out to the media.
Okay.
So we're about
Are you going to break
200,000.
news right now, Connor?
Yeah.
Breaking news.
Connor, what was April's number for?
So we had 290 homes sold, which was a 7% increase. Our average sale price jumped 14.5% to $204,500.
Okay.
So last year was $178,800.
Okay. Yeah. So we're edging that direction, right, to close that gap for a business person builder to say, now it makes sense.
Right. And I think you look at the numbers behind that, to Tony and the mayor's point, our labor costs roughly, I work all over the state, and our labor costs to construct homes are roughly about a percent higher than the Chicago market, nearly 1%. It's just under 1%. But the material costs are close to 4% higher than we see in the city. And I think a lot of that is supply chain and distribution costs, right? Because it actually comes to our local businesses when we buy them from the city or somewhere nearby. But our average sale price now at 204, I think you said, right, Connor?
Yes.
In Chicago, their median sale price is going to be more towards the 400,000 mark. So there's that profitability there. And as a real estate developer, we're often looked at as greedy and making all this money because somebody sees you do a $20 million project and they think you're walking away with $20 million. And the reality is the margins are slim.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at what's been produced in our market, a lot of great downtown redevelopment because of the historic tax credits. And so you layer in the River's Edge tax credit at 25%, and you layer in the federal tax credit at 20%. That helps bridge that gap so developers can walk away with a slim margin. And that doesn't come in other areas of the city, unfortunately, because most of our historic stock is in the downtown. But on the other side, we are seeing, and the mayor and Connor and Tony can speak to this, we are seeing new construction homes on the high end market, right? I mean, those are folks who can afford to say, I'm going to stay in Rockford. I'm going to just, invest in this home because I'm going to be here a while and eventually it'll catch up. But you're seeing those high end homes off of, Guilford and Mulford and over off of Perryville start to pop back up. So those are all good things, right? We just have to find how do we build housing for the middle market?
Mm-hmm.
How do we replace our old housing stock that is really that entry level housing or folks coming into the market for homes? Those are aging. 85% of our housing stock was constructed before 1979. Mm-hmm. And so we got to think about that. As we all get old, we all need a little bit of help. And those homes are no different than, me and going to the gym.
Guys, I think it's time to revisit the concept of victory housing again, like during World War II. As I travel around the country, I love looking at real estate. I love looking at what cities are doing around real estate and how people actually live. For example, Bentonville, Arkansas, outside of right downtown, the average income is roughly the same as Rockford's. And I notice time and time again, people are living in less than 1,000 square feet. Right. So how do we construct homes in such a way that the average person can actually have a place to live, right? And start to invest and get them out of the rental housing market and into owning a home. And I really have just been toying with that idea of it's back to victory homes again, right? Maybe no basements, right? What can we do to create a home that is affordable in areas where people are actually choosing to work?
And that's where those land use regulations come back in, right?
Thank you, Ron.
We have minimum house sizes, minimum lot sizes, but the city's working on that again. So also kudos. I do think one area that we could improve on, I'm seeing in other communities in the single family market, is the municipality will come up with a number of home plans and they'll pre-approve those, right? So you just come into the city and say, I want to build a house. And they say, here's the Sears catalog, so to speak, of pre-approved houses, and you're immediately getting a building permit as opposed to having to go through and think about the longer process due of, to permitting and zoning, et cetera.
Right.
So I've also seen the land bank as a great asset to our community. We we looked at how might we, I think the mayor was on that original exploratory committee. Connor, you were, and we did it as a community, right? We got that done. And so I think some of those lots, one of the areas as we think about infill, might be something that we did at Gorman in Milwaukee, which was infill and renovation of homes. But on those infill lots, we don't always know how the structures were torn down.
Mm-hmm.
And so, nowadays you can use ground penetrating radar for a couple grand and just look at what the risk is at that particular lot. And we might be able to prioritize some of those lots that are ready, willing, and able to be built on, because it'd be quicker and easier to market as opposed to added cost of now digging up a former foundation or footings that could be in those sites. So I think that's an option. We worked with the city of Milwaukee to buy lots in mass and then come in and build homes on them.
Mm-hmm.
I only downloaded one graph to present in this whole thing today, and the one graph is this one here. If it'll come up for me, hopefully it'll come up.
Yep.
The housing inventory active since about 2016 to today, and when I started working with Tony here in real estate in 2013, obviously we were still coming out of the short sales and all that fallout from the 2008 crash. And here we are, in 2017 and 2018, begging people to sell their homes because inventory was so low.
Mm-hmm.
And look at where we are now.
Right.
Just so those who maybe don't think we're having as much of a crisis as we are as far as housing inventory goes, this is the only graph really that you need to see.
Mm-hmm.
We are desperately seeking inventory, and whether that means building new stuff or refurbishing the old that's refurbishable, that's kind of what this whole discussion is about today, is where do we go from here, and what else can we do? Is there something that we're missing? Obviously, Mayor McNamara has pointed out that the city's doing a lot of great things to incentivize making builders to at least give a second thought to building here at Rockford and putting more stock into what we have available to buy. Is there anything that we're missing? Is there anything that's kind of glaring and jumping out that you can say, that's something else we should try?
Well, Greg, Tony, I'm curious if you can contextualize that for us. How does that graph look in comparable markets across the country? Is this a local situation that we're facing, or is it very common throughout the country right now that inventory would be down?
It's local. I have a house in Arizona. Houses are sitting in Arizona on the market for 6 months now, 180 days. I have part of my team that works out of Tampa, Florida. I just went down to visit with them. Same thing there. You are looking at 4 to 6 months sitting on the market. This is extreme. This is extreme. My business partner's been in real estate for 40 years. He said he's never seen anything like this.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a challenge nationally of underproduction, period, but not an inventory problem like we have. So one of the things I'm curious about, question for both Connor and Tony, when we look at that graph, and in 2013 we had, I think it was roughly 1,600 homes on the market. Now we're below 200. I mean, any good retail outlet, which is in essence what home sales is, any good retail outlet is how do you manage inventory and have the right amount of inventory on the shelves. That's going to be our key to economic success as a community, I believe. 1,600 was clearly too many, right? What do we feel is an appropriate number of homes to have in the market? I know lots of changes, seasonal changes, that kind of stuff, but just a rough estimate of what we believe would be good, because then that gives us an idea of what we need to build to.
Yeah. What's your opinion of that, Connor?
Yeah. So one thing we measure is absorption rate. And so basically, if we weren't going to add any new listings to the market, how fast it would sell. And so, we'd sell out in half a month, basically. That's, so we got about 2 weeks supply. That's nothing. More balanced market, in my opinion, is probably about 4, 5 months, maybe 6 months. That's not favoring the seller. That's not favoring the buyer. There's just a healthy churn of the market. I think during our peak of absorption rate, we were at over a 14-month supply. You look at even some of the higher end homes, if you're trying to sell $1 million property in Rockford, in 2014, the rate was probably more like 10 years. Like there would probably be one that sold every 10 years. So, it can fluctuate a little bit seasonally. So obviously right now, it's kind of our busy season, if you will. But we probably need about, 7 times the number of homes we have on the market. So just to kind of balance it, I would say with its current demand, but it would probably fluctuate a little less during the winter months, but that would be my response.
So you're looking at 1,500 to 2,000 homes on market would be a beautiful thing, wouldn't it? Because our market now goes to the Mississippi. We've enlarged our board.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a catch-22 because when those houses, whenever that happens, do hit the market, then supply and demand is going to cause our average sale price to go down. Right. And now we've just enlarged that gap to, does it make sense to build? So right. I do believe this is a necessary evil of not having enough houses so that our housing price can go up. It's going to fluctuate once more houses get back on the market.
Right. I think if we look at the Rockford housing study recently, we're talking about how do we increase production to 300 to 600 homes a year, roughly, right? And it, I think that takes into account some for obsolescence of existing home stock, but then also the growth in jobs that's anticipated. I think that's another area we need. I see the general public to understand. There was a big belief that when Chrysler closed and people exited the market, that we had all this excess inventory. And the reality is that never happened, whether it was the for sale market or the for rent market, because we were already inventory constricted at that time. So, when we say that those jobs are now in essence coming back, these folks are coming back to a market with no housing for rent or for sale. And so, being able to increase that production is important. That Barbara Coleman project is huge for our community, and we have to embrace that and accept it. The 30 units over by Lino's, big deal. We have to embrace that and accept that. Do we have some concerns as a community about multifamily because of some bad actors? Yes, but not all actors are bad, and not all product that is more than a single family house is bad. It's absolutely essential for us to be in a successful market.
Ron, I like to think about, it helps me visualize success when we talk about communities, and Tony too. You mentioned Bentonville, and they're doing a lot of things right in a lot of ways, including housing and product from a quality of life and tourism perspective. But what are some of those cities that are doing multifamily well? Ron, I think you and I have talked about some Indiana communities that are doing it well with those pre-approved housing plans and infill. Tony and Ron, what are those cities that you're seeing that we should be looking to?
I'd be glad to put some study behind that, but I will tell you what I see overall, both in visiting cities, smaller cities our size, as well as entertaining recruits for hospitals and so forth. They want community, they want walkability, they want grocery stores. I just tell them we're not going to have walkability for you. You have to get in your car and get to the grocery store. I do see Bentonville making strides that direction, in that they are creating pretty cool little subsets of communities through their town. I think that's something definitely we could probably look at.
Yeah, I think there's a number of communities on the list, and closest to us is Chicago and Madison, right, who are doing a great job of creating what they call the 15-minute city, right, where everything you want, need, and must have is within a 15-minute walk, to Tony's point, right, that you're less dependent on automobile traffic. And I think that it wouldn't be hard to get that in our downtown core or in other small kind of centralized business districts around our region, where we just look at maybe to spur additional housing, we're just missing the grocery store, or we're missing this, and being able to place those in those areas to, increase that walkability and the access, right, to make life a little more convenient for folks there, so that their ability to afford those things is one thing, their ability to get to them quickly is another thing. But yeah, I mean, locally, Chicago in areas, I mean, the city of Chicago just passed that $1.25 billion bond issuance to balance economic growth and housing together. And that is to, look at how do they incent housing with less reliance on TIF. And so that to me is an interesting approach, that they wanted to be more equitable, because if you look at those communities where TIF monies are deployed, generally they don't have all those creature comforts and quality of life components, and they're not getting the greater benefit. And where the most successful are in the higher end portions of the community, where the TIF really is no longer necessary. And so this was a way to balance it in the Chicago region. But there's a lot of wonderful communities. South Bend, Indiana is doing a great job of kind of near net zero housing. They've used this model with Habitat, but they've also used it with the CDC. And I think we are lucky enough on Rockford RLDC, sorry, with RLDC and the CDFI that they created. Thank you. I was going to struggle with the acronym, but Community Development Finance Institution. Years ago when we were talking about the need for the land bank, a CDFI was a big part of that conversation. It's a way to lend money into a community that comes at a lower cost to spur development, and it's good that we have one, but we need multiple. And I think that's part of our challenge, to solve for that, to get other CDFIs in our market, because they can do more than just housing. They can do the grocery store, like we did it with IFF when I was at the Housing Authority over on West State. It put groceries back into a neighborhood that hadn't had it for 30 years. So so it's not always just about the housing, even though I'm a houser by heart. It's making sure that folks have access to those things near their housing that is going to make even more demand for housing in that area.
Ron, I would also say all of that also, you mentioned multifamily and sometimes the difficulty of getting those approved. I would say all of this is also about education and advocacy, because if it's multifamily or multi-use paths, not many people appreciate them. Not enough people, I should say, appreciate them, because I think historically our town is, as Connor mentioned at the beginning, 15 minutes. He said 20, but I drive faster. So 15 minutes where you want to be. And so people are just used to jumping in that car. But today's folks, if it's seniors, younger, whoever it is, they want more options and walkability. And so you look at, we're trying to put a multi-use path on Highcrest. That would connect the river and downtown and the west side to the far east side. And it has been not the easiest. You look at, the multi-use path that we're going to be putting down Auburn Street. Again, not the easiest to get approved, but all of these things, I think, play such a critical role. And I think the last two things I'll say on this is, I think nationally, we have tried to push people, and probably people in my positions across the country have tried to push people into it's an either or thing. And I think we as a community can really do change if we just say we can do an and. It doesn't have to be this or that. We can do both. And I would lastly say, if you look back over Rockford's history, we rarely, if ever, regret saying yes. And we almost always regret saying no to something.
Right.
It is hard to get that through to some citizens and most elected officials, but we almost never regret when we actually do take a leap and do something big.
One last area I just want to throw in the mix that I've pushed on for a long time, is the connection to home and neighborhood and health outcomes, right? And what I'm seeing across the nation, and have since I was at RHA, and I've also pushed on our health systems, and I'm thankful that Shelton is over at the Health Council, thinking about how might we look at reducing our Medicaid, Medicare health costs as a community and leverage that. I mean, the data is clearly there. Investment in quality, affordable housing in good neighborhoods lowers healthcare costs. It's there, right? And so, what we're seeing, not to bring up health turmoil, but we saw large health systems saying that they were giving up on Medicaid, Medicare billings some time ago because they weren't getting reimbursed. Well, the rules around that is somebody coming in for the same health conditions more than once, you don't get paid after the first time. And so rather than walk away and say, we're losing money at this, if we were to think about it, how a health system might invest in homes, like Swedes used to do along the Charles Street corridor, those investments, are great for employees, but also great to put people in the neighborhoods around hospitals, but also that are healthy homes that improve their health outcomes. So that's another area where I see funding available to assist in the production of housing.
Well, I think we need to put a pretty little bow on this whole conversation. I know you got obligations throughout the rest of your day. So by way of doing that, is there one thing that a typical Rockford citizen can maybe do or advocate for or promote that would help push this all along? I mean, we've got a lot of reasons, cost of living reasons, better health reasons, just overall great reasons to be in Rockford. And we all believe in the strength and the future of Rockford. But to build up our housing inventory and to give people some options and to give people some opportunities to be homeowners, is there a single thing that we can focus on to really help give people marketing orders, if you will?
I'll go first. I think, and it ties into what the mayor was saying, is have a mentality and an attitude and ask questions that get to yes, rather than, if you don't understand something, if you want more information, if you're not sure that you're in favor of it, ask questions that have open-ended opportunities for dialogue. And I think communities that are successful get to yes through conversation, collaboration, and sometimes compromise.
I'll just add on to what John is saying, and I agree with that. The no mentality, I don't want it, and the not my backyard is, really a challenge in several communities, especially in ours when it comes to anything but single family. And so how do we ask those questions? How do we remain open? How do we really check our attitude to get to a yes? And, there's a large movement of YIMBYs, which is yes in my backyard. And I think that's where we need to be as a community if we want to remain on this successful path and continue to grow our community. Because the no is in part while the past years we saw population decline in some of our challenge. So we have a great opportunity before us. To the mayor's point, we've never regretted saying yes. And so let's get to that yes.
I would add one, I'd be not in my position. So if I didn't say this, one, vote, get educated and vote. Two, bring your ideas forward. What makes Rockford really unique is if you want to talk to me, you want to talk to John, Ron, Connor, Tony, you can do so. And you can probably do so in the next 72 hours if you really want to do that. So bring those ideas forward. We want them. We listen to them. And some of the best things going on in our community are an idea that just a citizen brought forward. It may have taken some time, but it came to fruition. And then lastly, I would say, and this will get me in trouble, but there is no wall around Rockford. So if you don't like it, you can certainly move and add that housing stock to the market. And I would say, and if you do like it, like I do, become an ambassador. And that does not mean run for office. You can and you should, but it just means have some pride, love your hometown, understand what great things are taking place, and appreciate those, and also help us address those challenges that we still face.
Yeah.
we're blessed to be in a very mobile country. So you're if you don't like it, you don't have to stay. Good news, you can go somewhere else. But and I want to echo what you guys all said. Share your ideas. Let us know what your thoughts might be. Attend the occasional city council meeting and such, and make your voice be heard. And we've got that opportunity here, so it's a good thing. Any final comments before we let you go? I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone's ideas, and I appreciate working with such a fine group of people in the city.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Thanks for inviting us to the conversation, Greg.
Greg, thanks for bringing us together.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg.
There's no single solution to this thing. We all need each other to kind of pull forward and look for new ideas, and hopefully we can find new ways to add housing stock here to Rockford. So you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll keep in touch and keep this conversation going.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
INCROWD 815. INCROWD 815. INCROWD 815. 815.
Welcome to our podcast today, which we are calling How Down Payment Assistance Can Help You Buy a Home. My name is Greg Saunders, and over there now on the other side of the screen is Jess Rielly from Envoy Mortgage. How you doing, Jess?
Hey, Greg, I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. It's a beautiful day in Northern Illinois, and
Yeah, happy Monday.
Time to talk today.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, as we get started, we want people to know they are welcome to share in the comments their questions, and we'd love to hear where you are listening and watching from today, even if it's not in Illinois. Let us know where you are at, where you're from, and the number one thing, if you have any questions for us today, and if we don't get to those questions during our live portion of recording this, we'll try our best to get to them afterwards as well. But we really pride ourselves on being able to help our clients get the best outcomes possible. And sometimes that's fairly simple and easy to do, and a lot of times it's very difficult to do. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff here today on this podcast. So feel free to put in the comments where you are listening and watching from, and we're going to hang out here as we do this, record this live. Not everyone likes to do this, Jess. So I applaud you for doing this with me in this format.
Oh, yeah. Hey, anytime I get to talk to you, Greg, I'm happy.
Appreciate that.
This doesn't scare me. I think it's fun, and hopefully we get some interactions too. If we get questions going and stuff, I think it would just make it awesome and valuable.
Well, we do have some folks also. I did get the Instagram feed to work, so we got some Instagram folks that can watch as well. And if you put your comments, questions there, I'll try my best to see them. Those won't pop up on my screen like other ones will. So
you got a lot to look at. You're like checking screens.
There's a lot. I feel like a TV producer. I was only in TV for about 7 or 8 months. I never had to do anything like this. I worked at a local TV station making graphics and running cameras for news.
Yeah.
In the studio. I was not a out of studio person. I was an in studio person. So
yeah.
But nothing like this. This is all wild.
I got the easy job. I just got to look at you and you tell me what you're seeing and what questions are coming up. And
well, let's start with the most difficult question of all. Jessica Rielly, who are you? Where'd you grow up, and how'd you find yourself in the mortgage lending business?
Yeah. So, okay, boy, let me start with, I went to NIU and I got a degree in business. I have been in the Rockford area my entire life. I never really left. So I grew up here. Even when I went to NIU, I commuted. I was working while going to college, and graduated in 2010, which didn't used to be.
Did you go to? Let's not miss the high school.
What'd you say?
Which high school did you go to?
I went to Harlem.
Harlem. Okay, you're a Harlem Husky. All
Harlem
right.
Husky. Harlem Husky, NIU Husky. I've just been a Husky my whole life. So then was commuting when I went to NIU a little bit. Actually, I finished up at the NIU Rockford campus, which was fun because our class sizes were really small. So if you don't know about NIU Rockford, or if you haven't explored that as a college option, it was awesome. So that allowed me to work. I started working at a bank at that time, which is how I eventually ended up in mortgage lending in 2010. And then I have just, I've been in lending ever since, been in mortgages that entire time. So I kind of found myself really enjoying where I was working, and they were like, hey, we'll hire you after you graduate. And in 2010, like, if you had a job, that was a great thing. It was right after
the economy collapsed in 2008. For those who might be too young to remember that, the economy was building up to a point where in 2008, a whole bunch of stuff hit the fan. A lot of stuff that shouldn't have been happening that was happening.
Yep.
We don't need to get into all the details of that, but the cause of that crash, those factors really don't exist today.
Correct. Yeah, it really changed the whole atmosphere of lending, and a lot of things changed, but specifically kind of in the lending arena. So when I started in 2010, it was a really interesting time to get into mortgage lending. A lot of people were exiting the business and telling me don't do this, and it's a really hard job, and guidelines definitely tightened up and things like that. But I feel like I was coming at a good time because I didn't know how it was prior to 2008, like in 2005 and 2006 and 2007. So I feel lucky in that regard, and yeah, I've been in lending ever since. I've got a background working for a local bank, working for a credit union, and now working for Envoy. Envoy is really just a bank, a retail mortgage bank, but we only do mortgages. So it's really what we specialize in. And have some of the, different products and programs, some of which we'll talk about today.
Okay. So that I think is an important distinction to let people know is Envoy is a bank, although they don't do checking accounts or savings accounts. Correct.
No credit cards or car loans or anything like that. We only focus on mortgages and HELOCs now too. Okay. So that's an important distinction between other types of mortgage companies that might be out there that don't have the banking products that you might be able to offer to everyday folks who are looking to get a mortgage and buy a house. Correct. Exactly. Yep.
Okay. So, and we're going to get into that here in just a little bit. My background, I spent 20 years in broadcasting. Never, ever thought I'd get into real estate. This was not my path choice. This was not my plan A at all. I thought I'd do radio for my entire career. I loved being in radio, which is probably why I still love doing the podcast and doing stuff like this. But I grew up in southeastern Wisconsin, little town called Wind Lake. I went to Muskego High School. I did do some college up at UW Stout in the Wisconsin system up there, but decided to drop out when my grants and my funding was going to end, and I was going to have to start taking out loans. And I looked at what school, and this was back in 1989. Okay. So even in 1989, I was looking at it going, okay, do I really want to take on this much debt and have this career path? And I didn't think I did. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a year off. I did a full year and a summer session, and was doing very well in school, but I just didn't like the loans idea to go forward. So I took a sales job with a company called National Motor Club. I don't even know if they exist anymore, but we did third-party marketing. I traveled all over the state of Wisconsin, visiting farmers union members, and they were offering a motor club membership as a benefit to their Wisconsin Farmers Union memberships. And mind you, I grew up in a house where my dad was a machinist. He grew up on a farm as a kid, but I didn't grow up on a farm. he moved to the Milwaukee area to take a job with my uncle. His brother, one of his older brothers, got him a job at a place called P&H Harnishvager. They make cranes. So they helped, anything that got built and needed a crane. They were one of the companies that made the huge cranes that got things built. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom until basically my sister and I were both teenagers. And then she became a para, was a teacher's assistant. So I bring that all up just to say I didn't come from money. We were not wealthy folks by any stretch. That lived in a very modest neighborhood and didn't complete college. So some people might frown on that, but that's the truth. After my stint of being in sales for the National Motor Club for a little over a year, I got an opportunity to start work here in Rockford. I was living in Broadhead, Wisconsin, which isn't that too awful far away. But I started working here in Rockford at a place called Big Sur Waterbeds, selling waterbeds. Remember when those were popular?
I do. I had a waterbed. Yeah, they were like not just popular; they were like really cool. That was what you wanted.
That's what you wanted. Yeah.
Yeah.
The low wavy ones. Did you want the extra special heaters, all that stuff? Yeah, we sold all that stuff. Right across the street from Lino's is where the store was.
Oh yeah, how funny.
Right over there. So I was there for how long was I with Big Sur Waterbeds? I was working there for a few months, and I was working part-time in radio. And I loved radio. And when the opportunity to go full-time radio came up, I jumped at it. So basically was in broadcasting for 20 years. And when that came to an end, I was like, okay, what am I going to do now?
Now what?
And Tony Vanderhayden was an acquaintance, not really a friend yet, but acquaintance. So we'd known of each other for quite a while. And we were in a position, my wife and I, where we just didn't know if we could afford to keep our house anymore. When the crash happened in 2008, I had been with a radio company for a couple of years, and we did okay until about 2012. Between 2012 and 2013, when I was no longer in full-time broadcasting and was kind of doing a lot of freelance stuff. I was DJing a lot of weddings at my DJ company, Big Day DJ, was helping to keep us afloat.
Yeah.
But it wasn't great either. So Tony comes out to our house in the fall of 2012. And I'm like, I don't know if I can afford my mortgage anymore. I'm struggling.
So you were meeting with Tony to possibly sell or see what option. Interesting. Okay.
Sell the house. So Tony sits down with us and says to my wife and I, you know what? Looking at your numbers, looking at the value of your home and everything that you're currently where you're at right now, your financial picture, I don't think you should sell your house. I think you should keep fighting, keep going forward, see what else comes up for you. But I don't think it's a good time for you to sell your house yet. This is a realtor who I'm talking to, okay? And I think it's important to bring that up to speak to Tony's character, because if any other realtor had come to our house, more than likely they'd have said, "Yep, the sign here. We'll put a sign in your yard in next week." Not Tony. She looked at our overall situation and said, "You know what? I don't think this is the best course of action for you. Keep fighting. See what else. See where you land." So fast forward to 2013. And the spring of 2013. So this is 11 years ago, almost to the month right now where we are. We have her come back out again. And I'm like, I haven't improved much, Tony. I don't think we can afford our house. And she goes, well, you know what, Greg, your personality is very similar to my buyer specialist, Laura's personality. I think you'd work really well with buyers. Would you consider getting into real estate? And I'm like, I had never considered it. But if you say I can shadow Laura for a couple days and see what she does, I got nothing to lose.
Yeah. What were you doing at that time? Were you mostly just doing like your DJing and stuff?
I was DJing weddings. I was substitute teaching.
So all different, anything.
Yeah. So this would have been in June of 2013.
Okay.
So nearly 11 years, very close to. spent a couple of days with Laura, and I was like, I could do this. This looks good, fulfilling. She loves what she does, helping people buy homes, and a lot of times it's their first home.
Yeah.
This is a fulfilling career to try. So I dropped everything. I enrolled in the classes at the real estate office here in Rockford, and I became Tony's assistant. So from July to September of 2013, I was Tony's assistant, weekdays, taking classes when they were available, and I got my license in September and closed my first house in November 1st of 2013.
That's my birthday.
There you go.
November
There you
1st. We'll celebrate.
go. So from November of 2013 till today, I've closed probably 420 something houses, and it's been a great career. I've really loved doing it.
Yeah.
Part of the positive of doing this job is meeting folks like you and partnering with you on things, and finding out that some folks, they want to buy a house and they just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So they call folks like Tony. I'm going to throw this up on the screen. So they call a place like Sold on Tony. They're like, hey, Tony's team, I want to buy a house. What should I do? And one of the first things we tell them to do, get pre-approved, get a loan. One of those places you can call is Envoy Mortgage. And Jessica Rielly, here's her contact information. We usually give a few other recommendations as well, so people can kind of shop around, because it's a good idea to take a look and see what personalities you mesh with and what options and what programs and products are available to you. Because mortgages are not one size fit all.
No, and that's what I tell clients this a lot. Like, most of my good friends are, from real estate, and a lot of them are lenders, and everybody has different products and programs and options. And so what might not work at one place might work somewhere else. And there's a lot of really great local lenders. And so we're very blessed in this area in that regard. And I would just encourage people to stay local, where, you're not just a number. We, know your name, we know your family. We'll be there at closing. I was at a closing this morning, and first time home buyer and her mom. It's just always fun. It just keep it local for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start from the beginning. What is a home loan? What's a mortgage? And when people hear things like FHA, VA, USDA,
so many acronyms.
Loan, what is a mortgage, and what's the best fit for most people, I guess? Or
so in simple terms, a mortgage is essentially a loan that is utilized to purchase a property, to purchase real estate. So I guess the place to start is just with contacting a local lender once you make that decision that you want to buy a house. And even before then, it's a good idea to take some action and take some steps towards improving your situation. So that might be different for everybody, but that might mean, working to save up some money, which we're going to kind of get into some grant options and things like that later. But, saving, never a bad idea anyways. Even if you don't need the money for closing, have some money set aside in case of an emergency. Credit is looked at. So obviously it's important to, pay your bills on time, make sure you're not having late payments, manage things like your credit cards responsibly. And then obviously you want to have a secure, job. You want to be employed and have a history of that employment and that income. So once you feel like you're in a good position, or even if you're not, you're just like, I don't really know what I need to do, I don't know where to start. Contacting a local lender is definitely the first step. So then we can kind of wrap our arms around your financial situation.
And I think that's one of the important things to stress to folks, is just because you might feel like you're not ready doesn't mean you shouldn't meet with folks like us to kind of help you figure that out.
Yeah.
And look what Tony did for me. She was willing to say, and I am too, because I tell you, I way more like a consultant, a salesperson. I'm not a salesy person at all. I like to consult people. Hey, guess what? You're not ready to buy a house yet, but here's what you can do to get ready. Or surprise, you are ready now, and we can start looking if this is the price range you want us to look at.
Well, have that time, right? Because, if you want to buy today, but you're not quite there, you need to have a couple of things happen before that. I don't think you can meet with either of us too early. Like, I don't think that that's a thing, because we can always give you advice and help you out, tell you to pay down something, tell you to, save X amount of dollars or whatever that looks like for that specific client. It helps to have some time. Nobody likes to be rushed or, jump into something that maybe you shouldn't have jumped into just because, you didn't have time or your landlord was selling your property or whatever. It's good to allow yourself that time to plan.
Yeah. It's a little different situation. I actually have a form when I meet with people at the office. One of the forms that I pull out that thankfully I normally set aside without signing, but every so often I got to ask people to sign it. I call it my permission slip to act like a crazy person. Because
tell me about that.
because you just told me today is, what is today? April 22nd as we record this today. It's the end of April. You just told me your lease is up at the end of July. So you don't want to renew your lease. You just told me that you don't want to renew your lease. Your rent's going up, and you would like to be in a house by July 31st. So we need to get on the ball. We need to get going now. And so you're going to sign this form telling me you want to be my priority A client. You want me to act like a crazy person, finding you a house now, because guess what? We might find you a house in 2 weeks and you might love it. And 5 or 10 other people might also love that house. And you might not win that first offer you write.
Yeah.
And the second house might happen the same way. It might be the 3rd or 4th or 5th time that we write an offer before we find the house that you actually get under contract. And how long is that going to take? I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you that.
Right.
So we're going to find you a house.
The approval process doesn't typically happen overnight. It could definitely, but if you have a unique situation, or if we have to verify your employment, meaning we have to actually get information from your employer, prior to issuing a good, solid, strong pre-approval letter, that can take time. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that home buyers today are making are thinking that process happens, immediately, and holding off on getting pre-approved or talking to a lender until they find the house that they want. And unfortunately, by that time, it's too late because, obviously we have a lot of buyers right now in the market, and inventory is low. So not a ton of homes available. And when a house comes on the market, if it's priced right and it's, in the area that the borrower's looking in or whatever, there's a very real chance that it could already have offers on it. And if that's when someone decides to apply, and get their paperwork together, it might already be sold by the time that, that letter is actually in place. So I would say in today's market, that's one of the biggest mistakes that people are making, is waiting until they find the property to talk to a lender.
Not afraid to say it happens quite oftenly that a new client that we start looking at homes with, most of the time has to lose out at least on one offer before they start to actually take my professional consultation advice on what to do with that offer. Because I think and I get it, I'm that way too. I interact with salespeople and I feel sold on things sometimes, and I'd rather not feel sold on things. I want to feel like I made a decision that benefited me more than my salesperson that help me make that decision. I mean, that's what we like to do. So when I'm telling people that have just told me how much they love this house, okay, so let's pretend that we're playing poker. Okay, you're sitting at a table with 5 other people who also want to win this pot known as the house that you're about to buy or try to buy. So you're telling me right now that you love this house, you really want it, so let's go all in.
Yeah.
What does all in look like for you? So that's specific to the client. I can't tell you what all in looks like. You have to tell me as the client, hey, I'm willing to spend, over asking price for this house. And what else are you willing to do? Do you have extra cash? Are you willing to cover an appraisal gap if the appraisal comes in lower than the sales price we agreed to? There's other strategies involved with trying to win a deal these days. That would be one of them. But what does all in look like for you, and how can we best put your best foot forward? Because here's the other confusing thing that most people don't get about people like you and I in this situation. Finding the house isn't really the difficult part. We'll find the house. It's going to be found. The difficult part now in this market is we have to sell your offer to the listing agent and their client to win a deal with them, because they've got multiple people to choose from, multiple offers.
Yes.
Every time.
Yes.
So how can I help make you look like the winning deal? And having a pre-approval with Jess at Envoy Mortgage is one of the big steps, one of the big rocks in the box.
I feel like you're giving me too much credit, but thank you for saying that.
It's one of the most important things, because unless you're a cash buyer, you've got to have a strong lender that that the seller's going to like and want to work with.
Yeah, I think that is extremely important. I think pre-approval letters, just in general, maybe the last, 12 months or so, have been really analyzed stronger than they ever have in the past, because you're right. I mean, a seller might have multiple to choose from. So they want to not only look, what are you willing to pay for this property, but who's your lender? Do I know them? Do they have a history of closing deals, or do they have a history of, things falling apart later on? And, can we reach them? If we need something from them, are they going to communicate with us? Are they available at night or on the weekends when a lot of banks are closed? I mean, all of that stuff is looked at. What type of financing, a buyer has, that's considered by a seller.
Right. It really is. It's all part of the mix, and they've got decisions to make, because it's the price might be the most important thing on the contract offer, but it's not the only piece.
Right.
There's a lot of different pieces, and the price might be 20 to 25% of the overall picture of the importance of what's going into the offer. So
sure,
it's more than just price. Well, some of the questions that we've heard about lending and mortgage loans these days, we just kind of defined what a mortgage is. How are current interest rates affecting affordability?
Yeah.
Interest rates have been a topic of conversation with a lot of our clients, because just a couple years ago, they were historically low.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're back to normal, and people feel like they're high, even though they're really high. So
yeah. I mean, I get it, right? Like, I mean, we're going to always compare today's rates to where rates were just a few years ago. I think that's normal human nature. So, especially for younger clients who don't know any different, all they know is the past, we'll say 5 years or so, but we've had a really, really long streak, not just during COVID, but even prior to COVID, of sort of abnormally low interest rates. And I'll say that, like, when I started in 2010, rates were between 4 and 5. And during that time, there was a huge refinance boom. For my first couple of years in lending, I just did refinances. I was just doing refinances over and over. And I learned a lot, but not a lot of purchases happening at that time, because I remember I bought my first house actually in 2010. And I remember thinking, like, gosh, I'm so smart. Like, look at how smart I am. Like, locking in, 4.25%. Because interest rates have never been this low. They're never going to go lower than 4.25%. And I refinanced that loan, and once they dropped below that. So even going back further, again, going back to 2010, which is when I started in the business, they've sort of been abnormally low. And then during, the COVID years, I'll call them 2020 and 2021, early part of 2022, they were just, at levels that I don't know that we'll ever see again. So, kind of reminding clients that This is more normal. Between 7 and 8% is where they're at right now on a 30-year. And that is historically more normal for a mortgage. That being said, though, I would never sit here and be like, well, they're not that low, and that, this is typical, because it does affect affordability. Meaning, obviously, your payment is going to be higher at a 7% than it would have at a 5%, right? So one of the benefits, I think, of starting early and getting pre-approved is so you can determine your price range. And a lot of people that are applying now, aren't really sure, and that is fine. That's common. Every time I call it like an initial consult with a new buyer, just so we can hear a little bit more about their goals and, what they're looking to do. Do they have a house currently? Do they need to sell that house? Is this their first house? We do that initial consult. And a lot of times clients are like, I don't really know, what I can buy. I don't know, what price point I should be looking in. So a lot of times we end up working backwards from where they want to keep their payment. Mm-hmm. So for example, if a client says, well, I want to buy a house at $350 and put minimum down, but I want my payment to be $1,800, it's not going to work. It doesn't line up, right? So we're kind of restructuring things maybe now more than ever, based on not only interest rates, but property taxes, homeowners insurance, which is not getting any cheaper, and just being realistic with people of, okay, if you want to keep your payment at $1,800 a month, here's what you would need to do, assuming you put this much down. So we run a lot more numbers than I ever have up front to make sure that people aren't shopping in the wrong price range.
Right.
Because nobody wants to get under contract and then find out, their payment is too high and they're not actually comfortable with that. Even if a buyer qualifies there too, I'm very conscious of like, okay, here's what you qualify for, but are you comfortable with this? Because we're not always considering all of your expenses either. I have a lot of friends that their biggest expense right now is daycare, right? Mm-hmm. Daycare expenses can be a mortgage for some people. So your expenses better than I do. And so I always ask people, is this comfortable for you? And if not, then maybe we need to, bring down or adjust the price point.
And that's the important thing to remember, I think, is it's not, the rate is less important than the actual monthly payment.
Yeah.
And one of the things that being a homeowner is a big benefit to a lot of people is you can lock in a rate for 30 years and you don't have to worry about your rent going up every year because you've locked in a rate. And the only thing that's going to change is your property taxes and your insurance payments, possibly.
Yeah.
And that can fluctuate, but not as much as most rent adjustments fluctuate.
Well, and let's be honest, I'm a landlord too. I have 5 rental properties, 6 doors. And I only say that because when taxes and insurance go up, your rent goes up too, right? Like we have to, as landlords have to keep up with that as well. And, those things have not been going down. And that's why I think you've seen a lot of rental increases as well, as to keep up the cost of some of those things.
Yeah. That's important to know. Sticking on the interest rate theme here, do you foresee interest rates rising or falling in the coming months? And do you think it's, is it important to lock in a rate now? Is there a buy down option that some people should consider? What's the act right now? What's
lots to cover. Yeah. So I think this will be an interesting year for rates. I think in the past, prior to a couple of the more recent reports coming out, like the inflation, the CPI report, I think people really felt strongly that rates were going to come down this year. I had a lot of people that really held that belief and would talk about rates coming down and refinancing at that point. And I don't personally see them coming down significantly in the short term, meaning, probably this year. Mortgage interest rates are very closely tied to inflation. And if inflation is going up or not going down like the Federal Reserve wants it to, interest rates are not going to come down. So when inflation gets to a point where the feds believe, okay, things are getting better, things are getting more under control, only at that point do I see interest rates coming down. So I only say that because I would encourage people to kind of consider that. I think I talked to a client actually this week that last year when interest rates started to go up and they were, 6%, they held off. They're like, oh, we're going to wait. Interest rates are going up. We're going to hold off. And, now they're looking at 7 and they're like, gosh, I wish we wouldn't have waited. And that's what I fear for people is, if you are going to wait until interest rates come down, just understand that might not be for some time. And then on the same side of that, when interest rates finally do start to come down, I think we will see a flood of home buyers look to enter the market, right? People who did decide to hold off, which can drive prices up, right? The more competition out there, it's going to bring prices up. So, waiting might not be in your best interest.
No.
Now, that being said, Envoy specifically has programs to combat the interest rates, not necessarily combat because the rates are where they are, but to allow you to have a lower payment for the first few years of your mortgage in order to keep your payment more affordable in the short term and hopefully get you to a point where you can refinance. Even if you don't, it is a fixed interest rate mortgage. So we have what's called a temporary interest rate buy down that can be seller funded for either 1, 2, or 3 years. And what that means is you need to get a seller credit in order to utilize these programs. And it would keep your interest rate 1, 2, or 3 points lower for those first few years. So this equates to hundreds of dollars monthly that a client can save, that a new homeowner can save by using the temporary buy down program, and typically thousands of dollars throughout the first few years.
And
now,
then that rate will go up on a scheduled time.
Correct. So for example, I'll just use a quick example, the 2-1 interest rate buy down. If the rate that the borrower qualifies for is 7%, right? That's the rate today where the borrower qualifies. A 2-1 buy down would be 2 points lower for the first year. So that client would start out at 5 for year 1. Then it would adjust in year 2 to 6%. And then for year 3 through year 30, it would be fixed at 7%. So this is not adjustable rate mortgage. It is a fixed interest rate product. And I think it's also important to know that we qualify that borrower based on the 7%. So the highest the payment would ever be. So we're not putting anybody in a bad situation. We're having these conversations of, hey, this is your payment year 1, this is your payment year 2, and then it's going to adjust to this at year 3.
And let's just say 3 or 4 years from now, interest rates are wildly different from where they are today. They could be way higher or way lower. And if that's the case, you got a decision you can make. You can refinance if you really want to.
Yeah, I think it's a win-win because if interest rates go up, you're still locked in fixed at 7% or wherever you wherever the rates were that you were eligible for today. So if they go up, you're going to be really happy that you have a fixed interest rate loan. And if they go down, you can apply to refinance at any time. So it's kind of a win-win for current homeowners. It's to tackle that affordability aspect. And secondly, Envoy just came out with a new program. It's called a lender funded 1-0 buy down. It's 1 point lower for the first year, no seller credit involved. So both of these programs are great options depending on what you can negotiate into your contract, seller credit or no seller credit.
Okay. And that's, again, one of those strategy things with your offer is that you can talk with your agent and your loan officer about, is this a smart thing to do? Is this going to help me win a deal? Is it going to help me afford this house if I win the deal? These are all very important questions to answer even before you go looking at houses, really.
Right.
You want to get this stuff
And that's why it's important too to have those partners who are truly on your side. Your lender should be talking to your realtor, and your realtor should be familiar with your lender, and having these conversations, because utilizing like the seller funded buy down, for example, affects what you're going to offer, right? And you're gonna want to write in a seller credit if you can get that for when you write up your contract.
Absolutely. I put in the chat links to our websites, and I want to bring up those real quick so people can see what they find when they click on those links. If you go to the envoymortgage.com/jessica.rielly, this is the page that you're going to find. Jess,
It's got
Rielly.
my full name, Jessica, right? My government name.
There you go. Licensed in Illinois and Wisconsin. Got a little backstory going on here. The different loan types, loan process, mortgage calculators, frequently asked questions, all that stuff. A bunch of reviews as well, and explanation of the Envoy business so you can understand what Envoy is all about. My website that I'd like to send people to is greg.northernillinoishomesearch.com. So my face might not pop up right away when you bring it up, because I'm on Team Sold on Tony. As I explained earlier, I'm a part of a team of agents that has an awesome admin team that helps us take care of a lot of our paperwork. We have listing specialists that work exclusively with sellers, and then myself here working exclusively with buyers. So that's what you'll see if you go to our websites from those links today. Is there anything that a potential home buyer can do to strengthen their loan application in such a competitive market that we're in right now? Is there some piece of advice that you're giving people to say, here, let's make sure we include this on your loan app so that we can give you the best product available to help you, aid you in your home purchase goals?
Yeah, I encourage full disclosure. So what I mean by saying that is, if you're applying for a home loan, which the application process is super easy, that's something that I go over on those initial phone call discussions, but include all of your assets. As an example, that's one that people leave off a lot is, I'm going to include my checking account, my savings account. My savings account has my down payment funds. This is good enough kind of thing. It's a little bit easier, maybe a little bit less paperwork. But, if you have a 401k or you have mutual funds and some different investments, that can strengthen your loan application and therefore strengthen your pre-approval. So I always encourage everybody, include everything, include all income that you have. We may or may not be able to use it to qualify, but at least I want to know about it. And if I can use it, I will. Income has to be documented. Assets have to be documented. So of course, anything that you disclose on your loan application, we're going to ask for documentation of. So I think 401k is just an easy one, because I think people are like, I don't really know where my 401k statement is, which, to be fair, I also don't know where my 401k statement is. I could find it though.
Either. We're not saying that you're pulling money out of it.
Yep.
We just know that it's there as
Correct.
a resource just in case.
Yes. So I tell people, I'm like, include everything that you have, because I want to give you credit for it. 401k, just like Greg said, if you are not using it to actually purchase the property, that's okay. If you're not pulling any money out of it, it's still counted towards what's called reserves. Reserves, from a lender's standpoint, is money that you have that you've done a good job saving that's not being tapped into for closing. And having reserves can really strengthen a file, especially if you don't have super high credit or if you're putting less money down. Adding reserves can definitely strengthen your file. So yeah, just be honest, be transparent with your lender, and that really helps in terms of qualifying. And then we don't have to ask so many questions, but a lot of times I'm like, do you have any other accounts or investments? And they're like, oh yeah, I have this 401k. I'm like, let's add that in, give me a statement for that.
Strengthen your application, make it look as good as it possibly can, because you're winning a couple different things. You're winning the best loan product that you can qualify for. And then with your pre-approval letter, you're trying to win a deal with a home seller by beating out other buyers with the best offer that they think they want to accept.
Right.
So there's a lot of different pieces there. One of the other questions that come up is probably more focused at me than you, but we can both talk about this. In today's market, how quickly do you recommend moving on a property that you find and that I found and I like? What's the timeline to house hunting today? And I think I kind of answered that earlier in the podcast here today about some clients having to lose an offer or two before really taking my advice about going all in on a house they love. The generic look at a real estate transaction is typically between 5 and 7 weeks. So about a month and a half between when you found the house and got it under contract to when you close on the house, get keys, and can take possession. That's very generic. That's not how every transaction goes, but that's how the majority of transactions go when it comes to the real estate market in Northern Illinois, at least in Southern Wisconsin. So in today's market, how quickly do you move on a property that you find? We've been in a speed market for over 2 years, probably closer to 4 years. A speed market meaning houses that are priced right are often sold and pending and under contract in 48 hours or less. When you see statistics, there's a statistic called days on market, DOM, and the days on market in the Rockford area has been as low as like 20 days or 18 days. I think at one point, in January, it was down to like 18 days, but that is all properties sold in the previous month. Some of those properties were sitting on the market for months before they finally realized they needed to lower their price because they were asking too much.
Right.
Other properties were just very poor condition, and it took a long time to find a buyer willing to take on the poor condition of the property. And then you have, I would say, the majority of homes that hit the market. They're ready to be sold. They're ready to be lived in. And you can write an offer on them the day that they hit the market and close probably 5 or 6 weeks after that.
Yeah.
So how quickly do you move on a property that you like? Today.
Yeah, immediately.
Today.
Immediately. And I think that goes back to planning though, right? Like, gosh, if there's one key to this market, it's planning. It's planning ahead, having your pre-approval in place, knowing what you can afford, knowing what program you're using, looking at houses with your realtor and just knowing all of that ahead of time. If you wait until you find that property, it is too late.
Yeah. There are other buyers who've been looking for 3, 6, 9 months already.
Yeah.
There are other buyers who have written 4, 8, 12 offers on houses and keep losing.
Right.
And now they're ready to go all in because they've finally learned their lesson of what that means. So what are you going to do as the first house I got really lucky. I'll say lucky. I got fairly lucky here with one of my most recent clients who was a referral from a past client. So they knew I had worked with a family member, that I had helped them, and it took us a while, but we got the job done. We got them their house and we won them a deal. This particular client saw me as the consultant that I am. And when we found the house they loved, they went all in. They went all in, and they still lost the first house they wanted to buy, even though they went all in. Like I told them that they needed to win. We just came up a couple $1,000s short, literally like $2,000 short from somebody else's better offer. So that hurts. It stings. And about a week and a day later, we found another awesome house, and we got it this time. So
good.
2 houses, and that one we pretty much went all in again.
Yeah.
And so here we are under contracts, waiting for the appraisal to come back to see just where we are at with the sales price we agreed to with the seller and the appraisal value that the appraiser is going to give it here probably in the next week or two. Do those meet perfectly, or are we out of whack? I don't think we're out of whack, but we might be $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 off.
Yeah.
and where we go from there.
I think too, it's important to kind of note though that does happen where you don't get the first house or the second house or the third house. And I said the key to this market is planning, but it's also patience and just kind of understanding that it's okay. And it just means that there's another one that's even better or an even better location. But it's really being patient and understanding that without getting down or, feeling upset. And I understand that's a lot of buyers are feeling that way, so lean on the team that you choose to, again, make your offers more competitive. Sometimes as simple as putting down more earnest money. When you make an offer on a home, you give what's called earnest money. And that's basically, I say it's like good faith money. I'm not going to change my mind or walk away for whatever reason. And so sometimes giving additional funds is more skin in the game, and a seller, might appreciate that. So kind of getting strategic with your team on how to make the best offer, but also understanding that, this market is unique and, willing to be patient.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's land this plane by going to the headline, which is down payment assistance programs. By the way, if you're just tuning in, I'm Greg Saunders with Team Sold on Tony at Keller Williams Realty Signature. I'm a buyer specialist on the team there. And then Jess Rielly with Envoy Mortgage, there we go, is a mortgage loan officer you can meet with face-to-face here locally if you need to, which is a big deal in my opinion. It's very important to be able to work with someone who you can meet with face-to-face and get your questions answered by someone who knows what in the world they're talking about. So are there any specific government programs or down payment assistance options available for buyers in this current market?
There are. I always tell people if down payment is holding you back from purchasing a home or even looking to see if you can purchase a home, do not let that hold you back. There is almost always down payment assistance available. Some of it is from a federal level. Some of it is from a state level. Here in Illinois, we have what's called IDA, IHDA, that stands for the Illinois Housing Development Authority. And IDA is a kind of umbrella organization that puts out various down payment assistance and down payment programs. And as long as I've been in lending, there's always been an IDA program. So I've been using IDA for a long time. Currently, there's actually 3 different programs that are available for buyers. All of them are percentage based, meaning they're a percentage of your purchase price, not of your loan amount, but of your purchase price. And in many cases, the down payment assistance can help out with not only down payment, but also closing costs. So depending on the grant that you choose, and do you want me to go through the grants, Greg? I don't know how much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a forgivable grant available. It offers 4% of the purchase price. That one is capped at $6,000. And it is 0% interest forgiven over 10 years. So you have to keep that property, keep that loan, live in the home for 10 years. If you sell or move out or refinance, let's say in year 5 or anything less than 10, really, you would owe the prorated amount back to IDA. So meaning, if you got $6,000 at closing and you had that home for 5 years instead of 10, you would owe $3,000 back to IDA. You'd have to pay half of it back. Again, it's nice because it's 0% interest. So you're never paying back over and above what was given to you. But the longer you stay there, the more that's forgiven. So that's a forgivable. The second one offers a little bit more. It offers 5% of your purchase price. And this one is with a deferred payment. So what that means is it is repayable in full. It's 0% interest at the end of that loan term, or if you move out of the property. So let's say I bought it as my first house. I now made it into a rental property. When I move out, I would have to pay back the grant that I received at closing. For most people, I have to imagine it's going to be when they sell their property or when they refinance their home loan. That lien or that grant does get attached to their home as a lien, so we'll know about it. It's not something you can hide. But that 5% grant is available up to $7,500. So with $7,500, for a lot of people, that can cover their full down payment. And for some people, cover their down payment and their closing costs. Then the third grant that's available is a 10% grant. So 10% of the purchase price up to $10,000. So there's a $10,000 cap on that. That is repayable monthly at 0%. So again, 0% interest, which is nice, over 10 years. So if you receive the full $10,000, it ends up adding about $83 to your monthly payment. Which we factor in, of course, at time of closing when we're talking about what your payment would be. So all of that being said, not that anybody, would expect to remember all of that, but just know that there's down payment programs out there to help you with not just down payment, but also your closing costs.
Yeah, there. And that's just it. It's which one fits your current financial situation the best.
Right.
That's what you want to talk to a loan officer like Jessica all about. And I guess as a way to land the plane for my side of things, and I think you'll agree, if people are waiting for rates to go down before buying their next house, should rates go down in any substance, the number of home buyers that are going to come out of the woodwork is going to shoot up home prices. Home prices will only increase if interest rates drop significantly. So what do you really want to do? Do you want to be a homeowner? Or do you want to play the game of the interest rates game, which is just it's not a game to play. It's like trying to.
I bought a house. I bought a house last year, and this is what I tell people. I'm like, I love real estate. I believe in investing in real estate, both the roof over my head and as a landlord. And I bought a house last year when interest rates were not good. They had just gone up pretty significantly, and I'm still comfortable with my payment. Again, I look at payment very closely, and I'm comfortable with my payment. I know where I'm at in terms of rent, and when they do come down, I will refinance. But I'm not betting on doing that this year and maybe even next year. But at some point I will, and that'll be great. That'll just be additional savings to me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, can you think of anything that we didn't touch on that we want to before we wrap things up? I think we covered all of it.
I did. You know what? I'm glad you said that. I have one thing to say. Pre-approvals. We've been talking about planning and starting early. Pre-approvals are good for 4 months. And I forgot to mention that. And I think that that's important because even if you're not planning, like let's say today, it's April, you want to buy closer to the end of summer. Start talking to us now. If you are pre-approved and everything looks good, that will get you all the way through the next 4 months. So it's important to know that.
There you go. There you go. Good advice. And if you have any further questions for us, feel free to drop them in the comments here. We should be able to see them, and we're glad to help. Click on the links too. They're in the comments as well, so you can go right to our websites, and we'd be glad to catch up with you in person. All right.
Cool. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks for your time, Jess. Have a great rest of your week.
You too. Thank you.